time to time, people have asked me why I dislike Peyton Manning, and some of it has to do with football, and I'm a football fan, and I acknowledge that. But it's mainly because of a story that I reported a long time ago that almost none of the other media have picked up on. Obviously, I saw it in other media as well, but the mainstream media has given it almost no attention. Well, now there's explosive new evidence on that because of a 74-page court document that came out from 13 years ago. And boy, is it a doozy. Now, it's about a case where Peyton Manning, when he was a student at the University of Tennessee, sexually harassed and basically assaulted, not basically, definitely assaulted a female trainer. Some of the details we knew about that story were a little off. Now we know the exact details. I'm going to tell you about that. And it just gets worse and worse because the assault itself is an enormous problem. How he reacted to it is a bigger problem. The lies are unbelievable. What he did to follow her throughout her career and to continue to harass her throughout her career is a giant problem. But wait till you get to the end where it just gets devastating. Okay, so let me begin the story. Sean King recently wrote about this in New York Daily News. He received that 74-page court document. And I tell you about the rest of the mainstream media because USA Today had it and then did not give it full coverage. So that gives you a question as to why they did that. And this story is larger than Peyton Manning. It's about hero worship that we have in this country for our stars as celebrities and how they play by different rules. So Sean King starts the article in the Daily News by saying, to begin with, Dr. Jamie Norwright was not a girl sexually assaulted by Peyton Manning. She was an esteemed professional, widely admired by students and peers alike at the University of Tennessee, where she was the director of health and wellness for the men's athletic program. Now, if you remember my earlier coverage on this, we were led to believe by the stories that came out that it was a young girl who was a trainer that was looking into Peyton Manning's health after one of the games when he did what he did, which we're going to explain in detail in a second. It turns out that that was wrong. It was not a girl. It was a doctor who was deeply trained, had worked with Olympic athletes, had been at the University of Tennessee for 10 years, had a stellar record. Okay, so a grown woman who'd been working with all these athletes for all these years, and he did this to her anyway. So now let's get into a little bit of background on her because we need to, because it involves other players that are going to be involved in this story. So this is before Peyton Manning comes on the scene. How was she treated at the University of Tennessee? And she'd done her undergraduate work there as well. As an undergraduate in 1989, Norwright, who had interned for a year with the women's athletics program, including the world-famous UT women's basketball team, was transferred to the men's programs, according to court documents and affidavits. Her boss, associate trainer Mike Rollo, perceived Norwright to be a lesbian. Now, Mike Rollo is relevant to this story because he later comes in to defend Peyton Manning after he does what he does, and in dubious ways. So let's find out a little bit about Rollo. Rollo, who had just been left working with a group of young women he also thought to be lesbians, allegedly began calling Norwright, quote, a cunt bumper. Unbelievable. Now that he is her boss at this point, and he's calling her that brazenly in front of her face, in front of others, and repeatedly. This wasn't a rare occurrence or something he said to her only in private. King continues, he allegedly called her that in front of others for 3 years until 1992 when Norwright built up enough courage to complain. She said she was almost exclusively called cunt bumper or bumper for short by a variety of staff members in the program. Now, of course, she's not even a lesbian. This guy's a total idiot. The volunteers, the University of Tennessee are known as volunteers, and the female athletic programs are known as, and the athletes there are known as the lady volunteers. Rollo used to call them the lady lickers because he believed they were all lesbians. This is a man that's in charge of these programs at the University of Tennessee. This is not that long ago. So this was rampant back then. Now, administrators, once she files and says, hey, come on now, please, it's been how many years of you calling me this outrageous name? Can you please stop it? And obviously, who's going to respect her there as her boss keeps calling her that name? So the administrators say, hey, stop calling her that. So then he just switches to Bumper. From then on, they just called her Bumper. It's gross. Now, okay, Peyton Manning then steps into the story. On February 29th of that year, the year that Manning had started playing at University of Tennessee, Norwright, at that point, the university's director of health and wellness, was in a training room, examining what she thought might be a possible stress fracture in Manning's foot. At 6'5" his feet dangled off the edge of the table. Manning allegedly then proceeded to scoot down the training table while Norwright examined his foot. At that point, she said, he forcefully maneuvered his naked testicles and rectum directly on her face with his penis on top of her head. Shocked, disgusted, and offended, Norwright pushed Manning away, removing her head out from under him. Within hours, she reported the incident to the Sexual Assault Crisis Center in Knoxville. Now, just think for a second. I know at that point, he's fairly young, and I know a lot of people will say boys will be boys. Now, you don't do this to anybody, let alone someone who's trying to help you with fixing your foot, a grown woman who's been working there for 10 years. And I mean, it's just despicable in every way. Imagine if that was your wife that he did that to, or your daughter that he did that to. It's, come on, reprehensible. Now, at that point, if being however old he was, he goes, you know what, my God, I'm so sorry. That was so stupid of me. My bad. All this goes away. It's a terrible moment. And by the way, it is a crime. Okay. But you know he's a student, star athlete. They're not going to charge him with a crime of sexual assault. If anyone did that to a woman you cared about, again, your mom, your wife, etc., would you charge them with a crime? You probably would, right? But even so, that stuff would have gone away if they were honest about it and earnestly apologized. Instead, they go in the opposite direction. This Rollo character steps back into the picture now and begins to defend Peyton Manning and wholesale makes up stories. Now, I know that, and we all know that, because every witness said that Rollo's story was totally fabricated. I'll give you some of the details now. When Rollo learned of the complaint, he allegedly concocted a story that Manning actually pulled down his pants to moon another student athlete, Malcolm Saxon, who was nearby. According to Rollo, after mooning the student, Norwright just happened to move her head right into Manning's pelvic region. What an interesting coincidence. Now, Rollo acknowledged under oath that he was the first person to use the word mooning. One person, though, could settle all of this, Malcolm Saxon. And in fact, he did settle it. In an affidavit, Saxon refuted Manning's story and made it clear that Manning never mooned him. In a letter to Manning, Saxon, who stated that he lost his eligibility as a student athlete over it, practically begged him to come forward and tell the truth. So there are a lot of collateral damage here. Malcolm Saxon told the truth about it. All of a sudden, oh, there goes your scholarship. You should have never crossed our star athlete, okay? No matter what he did and how despicable it was. Well, let's go to Saxon's letter so you get a sense of what actually happened that day. First, he said, I have stuck to my same story throughout this drama. I told Mike Rollo the next day and Coach Fulmer a week or two afterwards. I had nothing to hide at that point, and I have nothing to hide today. I have never been on Jamie's side or on your side, contrary to what the athletic department was telling you and telling her. I stuck to the truth, and I lost my eligibility for it. My red shirt request sat on Mike Rollo's desk for months as the process was going forward. I'm not angry about it anymore, just getting a little tired of it. So he then said, hey, Peyton, quote, you messed up. I still don't know why you dropped your drawers. Maybe it was a mistake, maybe not. But it was definitely inappropriate. Please take some personal responsibility here and own up to what you did. And I never understood why you didn't admit to it. You have shown no mercy or grace to this lady who was on her knees seeing if you had a stress fracture. You might as well maintain some dignity and admit to what happened. Your celebrity doesn't mean that you can treat folks that way. Now, I wish Malcolm Saxon was right about that, but he's not. His celebrity has allowed him to treat people that way and get away with it. So right now he's a sponsor and a spokesperson for so many different brands nationwide, Papa John's, the list goes on. He has, quote, according to the other press, squeaky clean image. All right. Now, who suffered the consequences here? Was it the person who did the sexual harassment / assault? No, of course not. He's the star. Was it the boss of No Right who clearly and unequivocally lied about it? Of course not. No, it was Norright. Quote, the school asked Norright to leave. Having poured her heart and soul out to the University of Tennessee for nearly 10 years, she agreed as part of a settlement agreement to part ways. Before she left, though, King continues, 2 staff members of the school, according to the documents, asked Norright if she would consider blaming the entire incident not on Manning, but on another athlete, a black one. According to Norright, the staff members, named as Mr. Wyatt and Mr. Rolla, went so far as to actually name a specific black athlete she could blame it on. Of course, she refused. Okay, that's devastating. Now, that's Rollo. We don't know that Peyton Manning participated in that. And that's apparently Wyatt, okay? Now, there is going to be a significant racial component at the end that does involve Peyton Manning. But already we're on a terrible, terrible footing here. And it just gets worse. Okay, now, in her remaining time at the university, Norright testified that Manning, in her presence on 2 separate occasions, deliberately reenacted the sexual assault on other student athletes to terrorize her. On another occasion, he allegedly called her a bitch in front of other athletes after snatching a marker used to label drug test specimens from her hand and throwing it across the room. 2 relevant parts of that. As you'll see in a minute, he keeps saying that she had a vulgar mouth as he curses at her. Not cursing normally, who cares? But it is relevant to this story. And then secondly, she's the one who used to do the drug tests. Later, Peyton Manning would be involved in a significant controversy involving HGH. I don't know if there was anything happening back then about this, but it is interesting that he's not interested in treating that person right and throwing specimens across the room and breaking them. All right, now, all this gets settled. She just wants to be done with it. She doesn't want to deal with this anymore. She moves on with her life. Many, many years later, she's working at Florida Southern, doing the same job, trainer and health and wellness, and she's got a good, respected career, getting great reviews there, as you're about to see. The year is 2001, and Peyton Manning is about to come out with a book. And in the book, he talks about her. Now, that's a violation, actually, of the agreement that they had. They had a settlement where basically they put a gag order on her. Okay, so if we're going to settle, you're never allowed to talk about this. But Peyton Manning is also not allowed to talk about it. But he's above the rules, so he writes about it in the book and says, what are you going to do about it? And as you'll see here, he lied terribly throughout the book on it, as a judge also seemed to agree. But on top of that, they take the manuscript and the portion that's relevant and they mail it to her boss so that she can also get fired from Florida Southern. Unbelievable. So here's the details on that. For more than 3 years, she served Florida Southern with great distinction. She received, according to the court documents, regular raises, outstanding reviews, and was credited for helping grow the program in measurable ways. Now, once the book comes in, what Manning said about her ruined her career at Florida Southern and in college athletics once and for all. After years of amazing reviews and great work at the university, the controversy from the book and the stress it created eventually caused Dr. Jamie Norright to be let go once again for doing nothing wrong. Now, who's right, who's wrong? I mean, how do you know that what Manning wrote in the book isn't true? Well, she filed suit. I mean, wouldn't you if this had happened to you? And she said all the things in the book about me are lies, and I'd like the opportunity to prove that they're lies. So she sued Manning, Archie Manning, his father, and John Underwood, who was the ghostwriter. Celebrities don't actually write any books. They talk to a ghostwriter, and he writes it for them, so that's why he's involved in the case. Now, that went before a judge in Florida, Harvey Kornstein, and here's what he said in the preliminary hearing on whether they should have a trial. He says specifically, there is evidence of record substantial enough to suggest that the defendants knew that the passages in the question were false or acted in reckless disregard of their falsity. There is evidence of record to suggest that there were obvious reasons to doubt the veracity of Peyton Manning's account of the incident in question. The court further finds that there is sufficient evidence to permit the conclusion that the defendants entertained serious doubts as to the truth of the passages in this case. Now, slander, libel, all these things are very hard to prove. You have to prove that they were lies, unequivocally, and that the people that said them knew that they were lies and did it maliciously. And the judge here is saying, yeah, we've got a lot of evidence that that's the case. And so we're going to go forward in this case, which then leads into depositions, which then leads into disaster for Peyton Manning. Isn't it amazing that this stuff never came out, even though these same court documents were mailed to the USA Today back in 2003? No. The star has to be protected and pampered. Whatever he does to other people is immaterial in our society and a pop culture obsessed with celebrity. So now to the testimony and the depositions. Archie Manning says about Peyton Manning, quote, he didn't really like this girl. Okay, and by the way, again, she's not a girl, she's a grown woman with a huge career at that point, okay, with some of the top athletes in the world, including Olympians. Peyton Manning said, I certainly didn't dislike her. I thought she had a vulgar mouth, but I always tried to be nice. Okay, I don't think so. Now, those are slightly contradictory, but not overly important. It just sets up the context of Peyton Manning saying, what? I had nothing against her, even though everyone else says, no, he intensely disliked her. The ghostwriter also says the same thing. Now, he says as part of his line about, I didn't really mind her. He said, at one point I even did her a favor. I drove these other 4 student athletes home from an event. So they bring the other student athletes in, and to the person, they all go, no, he didn't. He did no such thing. Gino Devane, one of the athletes, says, I unequivocally state that this did not occur. Now, and the others, including his own teammates, say what he says both about driving us home that day, being nice to her, and her cursing, not true, not true. They called an untold number of witnesses. Hey, did she have a vulgar mouth? I mean, what an absurd conversation anyway. Does that justify you putting your genitals on her face and her head? Okay, but every one of them, apparently this is an unbelievably squeaky clean woman. Imagine what they'd say about me, right? All of them said, we never heard her curse. So even though these are friends of Peyton Manning, one of them was Eric Lane, a fullback, and he was an employee of the University of Tennessee at the time of this deposition. He's like, I'm sorry, man. She never said anything bad, and Peyton didn't drive us home from that event. It's just not true, okay? He has no reason to lie. In fact, he has reason to lie on Peyton Manning's behalf, and he still says it's just not true. Okay. Peyton Manning continued in the deposition, quote, I've never approved of Jamie's vulgar language. It's always been my opinion, along with the majority of the team, that Jamie wants to be one of the guys. So back to the accusations about her, possible implicit accusations about her sexual preferences. Okay, all right, let's get past that because it's going to get much worse. According to the deposition, he told his father that she was, quote, kind of trashy, had the most vulgar mouth of any girl he'd ever seen, had a toilet mouth. Okay, wow. So again, this is part of Peyton Manning's image. I'm squeaky clean. I'm offended by anyone who would even curse. She has such a toilet mouth, okay? But he did also add that she was unattractive but had big breasts. That's very classy. Now, at this point, remember, he's not that young kid who did that stupid thing. He's now a grown man playing for the Colts, wrote this book about himself, lied about her according to all the witnesses and according to the belief of the judge that looked at it in the first place. And he's still saying things like this about her. Okay. Then Peyton Manning, apparently, allegedly, according to the deposition, told his father that she had, quote, been out with a bunch of black guys. And he's worried about her vulgar language. Under oath, the ghostwriter, John Underwood, revealed that Archie Manning suggested to him that Norwright was going into the dorms and having sex with large numbers of black student athletes. That's in 2001. This stuff never got revealed. It was right there. But no. We got to protect our star, our celebrity. Okay. They asked Lawrence Johnson, an Olympic silver medalist at this point, hey, is any of this stuff true? No. I worked with her, not remotely true. They asked Antonio Brewer, who was a student athlete at the time. Here's what he said. He testified that he had never heard her use vulgar language of any kind and that he was deeply offended by the racist suggestion made by Archie Manning that she was sleeping around with black athletes. Now remember that in the beginning, they called her a lesbian. And by the end, they're like, oh yeah, but she sleeps with black guys. And by the way, how is any of this relevant to you sexually assaulting her in the first place? What, did she have it coming? This is grotesque. And the end of the story, Sean King explains, she has not worked in college athletics since being let go from Florida Southern. Unfortunately, this is not just the tale of Peyton Manning. This is the tale of America. So if you're famous, you're rich, and you're powerful, you get away with this stuff. And if you are the victim of that, you are buried. There's a great side to America, but unfortunately, this is our ugly side. And that's the reality.